you build a landing pad on the moon? Landing pads on Earth are challenging as it is, as we've seen with Starship. It's taken a few modifications to get it right. But building a landing pad on the moon will be exponentially harder. Look, we haven't even been back to the moon in over 50 years, but instead of another Flags and Footprints mission, NASA is looking to stay. The Artemis program and Starship's human landing system will help us return, but we're gonna need infrastructure to actually come and go. In this video, I'll introduce you to one of the companies aiming to be a piece of that puzzle in the quest to build a moon base. SpaceX is obviously doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Okay, pun intended with Super Heavy and Falcon Heavy. But they can't make frequent cislunar space travel a reality without other logistics being solved. Even Jared Isaacman, who is about to fly with SpaceX again on the Polaris Dawn mission, says SpaceX can't do it all.
Obviously, big SpaceX fan and everything that they're trying to accomplish, but they can't solve all the problems relate to, making us a spacefaring civilization. Like they're working on the vehicles. There's a lot more to it.
So I drove to the Boeing Center in San Antonio to meet with the CEO of Astroport to talk about how they want to help ships like Starship's HLS land on the moon.
Astroport is building infrastructure for the moon. That's our main goal. We have to go back to the moon and stay. If we're going to do that, we need a place to land and come and go for the supply chains and all that. And to do that on a consistent basis, you need a safe landing area. And now, how do you build a landing port on the moon? How do you build a landing pad? And that's our research we're doing. And we're using the regolith that's on the moon as the core base building material.
Starship será el primer cohete del mundo totalmente reutilizable. Elon Musk tiene una visión de nosotros yendo a Marte y requerirá mucho trabajo, pero SpaceX lo hará realidad. Espero que disfrutes aprendiendo sobre cohetes conmigo. Okay. I still have work to do. So you might guess that the sponsor of today's video is Babbel, a language learning app. This app is the best way to learn a new language, and for someone like me, it's a great way to polish the rusty Spanish that I have accumulated over the years. Babbel teaches real-world conversation in the language that you choose, which means that hopefully, if you see me down at Starbase and you speak Spanish, try to strike up a conversation with me. And there are so many languages that I want to learn, but obviously I have to go one at a time because learning a language can be difficult, but Babbel is scientifically proven to help you learn a new language in as little as 3 weeks. And I've met a lot of space channels that actually deliver their content in Spanish, so I thought it might be good to have some Spanish-speaking Starship reports or information in the future. I am not a newcomer 1, I'm a newcomer 2, which means that I haven't forgotten all the Spanish that I learned in school and in my past jobs, and I'm also ready to have short conversations about everyday life and your hobbies. So, start learning. The lessons prepare you to have conversations about travel, relationships, and much more. And of course, it's going to take me some time to become fluent in Spanish, but Babbel has already helped me regain some of the knowledge that I already had in the back of my brain somewhere, and I've already learned some new words in just a few lessons. Also, Babbel has a 20-day money-back guarantee, so what are you waiting for? Start today. I know there's at least one language you've been curious about learning. And keep in mind, learning a new language is one of the best exercises for your brain. Much like learning an instrument, it's hard to replicate with any other activity.
¿Estás casada?
So click the link in the description of this video to get 60% off of your subscription. Finally, tell me in the comments what language you plan on learning, and thank you to Babbel for sponsoring this video. Let's get back into it.
So we're doing, it's called in situ resource utilization, or ISRU. We're taking the raw regolith and we're melting it and turning it into bricks, solidifying it so that it becomes the pavement for the landing pad that we're constructing, together with the robots and the autonomous robots we're going to be using to do the construction process. Now, we're not actually using real regolith at this point in time. We're using simulants, which is a similar material that we find here on Earth that's consistent to the characterization of chemically and mechanically similar to the regolith you find on the moon.
Here are some samples of bricks they've made from simulated regolith. They're experimenting with different densities, levels of thickness, and abilities to withstand heat. And now they're working on making the same brick in a vacuum environment, which is what they'll have to do on the lunar surface.
We're doing that as well as the complete end-to-end system that it takes to actually do this. We're not just making material development, we're taking our approaches from an end-to-end systems approach. Everything from the rocket that's used, how do you package that rocket with all the assets, the construction assets you need to bring with you, and then how do you stage it, how do you set up once you get there and you land, you got to stage, you got to put your power system in place, you got to put your communication system in place, and then you start doing your excavation, your regolith distribution, and then your feedstock to the brick bots that we're making. For making the bricks as well.
So why is lunar regolith such a pain in the Well, let's look at what we found out when Apollo astronauts returned from the moon. We found that dust that clung to their spacesuits made their throats sore and their eyes water. Lunar dust is made of sharp, abrasive, and nasty particles. While researchers are still trying to figure out how bad the dust is in terms of human health, let's talk a little bit more about its makeup. Lunar dust has silicate in it, a material commonly found on planetary bodies with volcanic activity. Here on Earth, miners suffer from inflamed and scarred lungs from inhaling silicate. On the moon, the dust is so abrasive that it's even eaten away layers of spacesuit boots and destroyed vacuum seals of Apollo sample containers. Lunar dust is extremely fine, like powder, but it's also sharp like glass. And because there's low gravity on the moon, 1/6 of what we have on Earth, it allows those tiny particles to stay suspended for longer and penetrate more deeply into the lung. Because the moon has no atmosphere and is constantly bombarded by radiation from the sun, it causes the soil to become electrostatically charged. The charge can be so strong that the dust levitates above the lunar surface, making it even more likely to get inside equipment and people's lungs. And as one of my patrons, Beaky Twitch, pointed out, lunar dust gets kicked up just by thermal Brownian motion in the daytime, but this gets even worse when the ground is plumed with rocket propellant or movements of lunar nauts on foot or wheeled vehicles. So you can imagine why it is such a problem to land on the moon. But the lunar soil does have a bright side. As Astroport is demonstrating, you can heat it to produce bricks that can offer shelter for astronauts, or to build a landing pad. Oxygen can be extracted from the soil to sustain human missions on the moon. Okay, so we see this moving. This is a NASA licensed excavator, and tell me how it works.
So this drum goes onto the lunar surface, it picks up the regolith, dumps it into a sieve in the center, where it's then melted into bricks, and that's how the landing pads are constructed.
So when a lot of people think about returning to the moon, they obviously think about NASA Artemis, they think about SpaceX's HLS. Why is it important to have other companies like yours, sort of maybe cottage industries even, get involved in this, huge task?
Yeah, so it's about the economy, lunar economy, what they call the cislunar economy. It's a new continent, the moon is, right? And we're there to make a gross national product, part of our GDP.
Right.
Okay, and all the industries that are being sprung off from the ability to get to the moon because of the low cost now, because of companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, and all the companies that are bringing down the cost of launch. Is getting it viable now, so we can actually think about the ability to do business in space. And right now we're doing business to business on Earth. When we start doing business to business in space, then we're really there. Right now it's pulling together the demonstration missions. All right, we need to demonstrate that we can actually do what we're saying we're going to do, and what we're doing here terrestrially. But now we want to get to the lunar surface and demonstrate the brick being made on the moon, on the surface, out of the actual lunar regolith. That's really the goal. Another part of that is understanding how the regolith flows. There's issues with the flowability of regolith and sieving it, and getting down to the feedstock that we need to have. We want to demonstrate some technology we've been developing in that regard as well. So what we have here is the simulant we work with. We use two kinds. This is called LCATS-1. This is similar to, in composition, mechanically, to what you find on the lunar surface. It's a Mara simulant, the regolith that's found in the Mara regions, equatorial regions of the moon. We also work with another one called a Highland simulant, which is more what you find in the poles of the moon. So there are different compositions, and that's important because when we start making the bricks that we're making here, there are different heat regimes. They melt at different temperatures. So we have to make our furnace or melter so it's agnostic to no matter what simulant we're putting into it or what regolith is being put into it as well. Now, you see this one here. I'm going to show you the difference here. Feel the weight of this one, if you will.
Okay.
Versus the weight of this one.
Okay. Oh, this one's significantly heavier than the other one.
It's
okay.
much denser, right? Well, the difference is that this one has been mixed with a PLA, a polymer, so that we can take it and turn it into a filament and 3D print with it. So now the idea is that we not only making the bricks, but we're able to 3D print and make fine detail. You can see they've got a honeycomb pattern here. We can print fine detail with this PLA mixture of simulant.
Okay.
So,
now, is the PLA a product that you're going to have to bring with you, or is that something you can do in situ?
Yeah, in the beginning you will have to do that. Okay. Now the idea is that we'll be able to, way down the road. Okay, we're going to have ability to grow greenhouses, right? Grow food and that kind of stuff, like you're seeing over here in the picture. That we're there's going to be a whole, and I'm talking a couple of decades away here, where we're actually growing the feedstock, the corn. PLA is made out of biomass.
Okay.
So we'll make duckweed or corn or whatever that turns into PLA, that turns the PLA into the filament. That's a whole supply chain logistics, right? That needs to be built up there on the surface. We're a long ways from that, so we got to bring that PLA with us as well.
So one of the, I guess, innovations you're trying to work on is not just making the bricks themselves, but they have a kind of a self-sealing method that doesn't require grout or anything to keep them together.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
So yes, exactly. You can see here our form shape that we use is this hexagon. It's a trilobe hexagonal shape that becomes an interlocking brick essentially into this pattern you see here. And the way we do that when we put the bricks together, we have a furnace. Actually it's a patented furnace we just got our patent on, where it allows us to place one brick down. This is the size of the brick we're talking about. Place it down, and then it goes to the next spot to make the next brick. And when it's against the wall, it's against here, the nozzle lifts up and it melds together because it's still hot. So now we're melding the sides together, and you go to the third brick and the two walls will lift up and they meld together. So essentially they're melting together to form the pavement surface itself.
Okay.
As well.
So the idea is that this would form the surface of which a Starship or other lunar lander may land on. Have you done any testing with it to see how does it do with direct rocket?
Yeah, we've done a few tests of that. We're still trying to for the we call them ambient bricks because they're made in air here, and we have to get them into the vacuum. And the ones that are in vacuum, you'll see at the lab, are not as dense, not as good as these ones. Okay. That's our challenge right now. That's what we're working towards, is to move those to. This is our benchmark. Now we got to get to the ability to do the same sort of density in the vacuum chamber.
So let's go from Area 21, which, by the way, you can visit in San Antonio where we filmed this part of the interview, but let's take you to the lab and actually see the vacuum chamber that they test in. Tell me exactly what we're looking at and why this is so crucial equipment for what you're trying to do.
Well, this is our vacuum chamber where we do all of the testing to try to simulate as much as we can the lunar environment. With this particular vacuum, we've been able to get down to about 500 millitorr, with ambient being about 760 torr. That's kind of the baseline pressure on Earth. The moon can get as low as 10 to the negative 12 torr. And so we are orders of magnitude from that.
Wow.
But we put the simulant in there, and one of the interesting things with a vacuum chamber is you want to have it as clean as possible for it to work most efficiently. But we ignore that, and we put dirt in it. We put the regolith in it. And as you're drawing the vacuum, interesting things happen. It starts to behave as a fluid. This fluidization happens, and it'll actually boil and move. It doesn't change phase. It's still dust, but it behaves like a fluid.
Wow.
It's the most bizarre thing. But overcoming that, as we're pulling a vacuum and getting it as low as we can, we have to deal with that and take the vacuum down at just the right rate. I call it poofing, to have it send up and fluidization happen where the regolith just goes all over the place. It makes a huge mess. Messes up your vacuum chamber. So that's one of the things we're trying to develop that regimen to take the vacuum down slow enough where we can not have the full liquefaction effect or fluidization effect. And then what we do differently than other folks who are doing this type of research is we then add heat to it. Put this over here. So this is an induction heater. It sends a current through these copper wires inside a coil. Let me see if I can open this up. And you can see the induction coil inside there. And so the current goes through, creates a magnetic field, and latches on to a carbon-based crucible. We have used graphite or other materials too. We're experimenting with what the best material is that doesn't react with the regolith. And so this is what will heat it up to about 1700 degrees Celsius, which gives us that full liquid melt of the simulant. And then we have a little wobble stick that we developed here in-house made out of ceramic because we couldn't make anything that would interact with the magnetic field. So we have a ceramic wobble stick that will unplug or come out the bottom, allow it to drain into a mold.
It's interesting that, regolith is like the enemy of astronauts, but you're,
Yes.
Turning it into something to use to our advantage.
Exactly. That's the interesting thing about it, because we have to deal with everything the astronauts have to deal with, especially when we're talking about robots and we have dust mitigation, because all of the gears, this stuff gets everywhere. And it's electrostatically charged. And so you get this levitation effect on the moon. It actually levitates. And is electrostatically charged and will suck onto any astronaut's clothing, any gears, anything you have. And so we have to deal with that to utilize it and use that excavator that we saw earlier.
Well, and I've interviewed, Jonathan McDowell, who's a pretty famous astrophysicist about this, and it sounds like it is very hard to contain. So how are you able to have it not just be chaotic, and how are you able to rein it in?
That's a good question that we don't have an answer to. It's a work in progress, right? If we knew, we'd already do it.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things we do here at Astroport is try to solve those problems.
Yeah.
And that's what engineering is solving something that hasn't been solved before.
Right.
And so these are the challenges, and this is actually why I love doing this kind of stuff, because it's like a big puzzle.
Well, a lot of the fans that I have that watch Ellie in space, a lot of the viewers are diehard SpaceX fans. So how is your work here going to possibly benefit or interact with what SpaceX is doing?
Well, I think in order for SpaceX to fully realize some of their dreams on the moon or on Mars, we need the infrastructure. And so we complement that. So SpaceX is making the landers and all of that stuff. We're doing the infrastructure, the landing pad, the power generation, all of that, the habitats, all of the stuff that goes with it. That's where we come in. So I think our work is going to complement that. And in fact, I think it's critical, a critical piece to having that sustainable presence off planet. So here's some LSP too. This is a simulant that is designed to replicate the regolith at the south pole of the moon. And so we have melted it and tried to cool it, anneal it in such a way so if we go too fast, we get glass. We go too slow, we want to get that Goldilocks thing where we get the right amount. But one of the things we discovered is that the porosity of this is tremendous. So we have entrained gases, and as we heat, we create more gases as the chemistry happens. And we want to get those out as fast as we can, cool it as much as we can, or as slow as we can, not too fast, all of that. But this is one of the things that we cut them apart. We look inside using a microscope. We've taken it over to the University of Texas at San Antonio. They've done all of the compression tests and all of those things. So we're trying to get the best product that we can, the strongest brick, the easiest to make, the easiest to replicate on the moon, as best we can here in a terrestrial setting.
Right, not an easy task.
Well, that's why we get paid the big bucks.
Yeah. So this is just a tiny glimpse of all of the work that's going on behind the scenes. And I want to know if you guys enjoyed hearing from some of the sort of outside companies other than SpaceX or NASA working on our logistics for returning to the moon. If you liked this video, I'm happy to reach out to other companies working on their own technologies. And frankly, there's just so much that has to go into actually making this feasible for the long term. One of the topics that Jared Isaacman was talking about was also a lot of people feel sick in space. So there's everything from medicine to obviously infrastructure, the how-to of getting there and back. It's just a lot. So with that being said, if you guys like this video and hearing from some people working behind the scenes, I'm happy to scope out some more of these stories. And if you've made it to the end, thank you so much for watching this whole video. It was really cool to go to somewhere local here in Texas and see what they're doing. Obviously, I can't really show you what SpaceX is doing behind the scenes or even Blue Origin, even though I've toured both of those places now. So thank you to Astroport for being so open with this tour, and hopefully you guys liked it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Only computer nerds will understand this. If you guys enjoyed this video and all of my Starship coverage, please subscribe to Ellie in Space. It's completely free, and that way you won't miss any future videos. If you want to take it a step further, please consider signing up for my Patreon. YouTube revenue can be very unpredictable and hit or miss, and you guys on my Patreon are why I'm able to take these trips and help me experience the life that I'm very thankful to live down here at Starbase and many of the other places that I've gone to report for the channel and the places that I'll be going in the future.